Today in Crypto Land, I have some interesting stats to share with you about why this is a Bitcoin hodler's market. The CEO of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, thinks that Africa is going to be the next big opportunity for Bitcoin. German banks are opening up the doors to crypto. Russia is on the fence again about how it feels about cryptocurrencies. And an Ethereum developer has found himself in hot water over US North Korea sanctions. And let's just jump straight into it. And the first story today is, yes, about the Bitcoin hodlers. So according to this, 64% of the Bitcoin supply has not moved since 2018. So we're looking at millions of coins here, 64% of the total supply, 11.58 million Bitcoin that have stayed in the same wallet since 2018. That's a lot of Bitcoin hodlers right there. What this is showing is that people are in it for the long term. The hodlers of last resort are the ones that are in charge of the Bitcoin market at the moment. Yes, there's lots of speculation going on. Yes, there's lots of futures speculation going on. Yes, there's lots of people moving in and out of Bitcoin all the time, but the majority are people who are hodling. Now, you have to keep it real. A percentage of that Bitcoin, a decent percentage of that 11.58 million, is lost. The estimates vary widely from 3 to 4 million to as much as 6 million Bitcoin have been lost forever. Really hard to say because simply because those Bitcoin have not moved does not mean the person no longer controls the private keys. They may just be sitting on them. Every once in a while, we see one of these old wallets wake up and move 50,000 Bitcoin around. So a lot of these guys still do have their private keys, the really big Bitcoin whales. They're just not moving them around. People are hodling. And this is an interesting statistic for you as well about the majority of Bitcoin hodlers right now are actually in profit, which is fascinating. Now, this is actually from a couple of weeks ago when the price of Bitcoin was around $7,000. I understand we're a little bit above $7,000 right now, but even at that time, 54% of Bitcoin holders, 54% of the addresses were in profit, which is an astounding amount of people who are in profit on Bitcoin at the $7,000 mark. Obviously, at the 7,300 mark that we're at currently, a few more percentage points of people are in profit, but it really just shows that buying and holding Bitcoin for the long term is really the best strategy for most people who want to get exposure to the crypto markets. This website here, dcabtc.com, shows that if you invested $100 every Friday for the last year, you would still be up nearly 27% in dollar value. So you would have put in $5,300. Your total fiat value right now would be $6,721. It really just shows you that buying and holding Bitcoin is a great long-term strategy. I know there's lots of options out there for you to do, whether you want to look into the lending markets or you want to flip altcoins or you want to go and do futures trading, all that fun kind of stuff. All of that carries varying degrees of risks from kind of risky to super freaking risky. But buying and holding Bitcoin, solid long-term strategy. And we see how many hodlers there are, how many people that are just putting Bitcoin in their wallets and chilling. Very powerful stuff to just stack sats and chill. Remember, we're in the early phases right now of the price discovery of a scarce asset, of something that is the native money of the internet. There's a lot of value flowing into Bitcoin, a lot of hodlers flowing into Bitcoin, and a lot of infrastructure being built around Bitcoin as a payment solution for the internet. Now, the next story I have here for you is from the Twitter CEO, Jack Dorsey. Jack went to Africa, and he loved it, and he thinks that Africa will be one of the next big places for Bitcoin adoption. He said, sad to believe in the continent for now, Africa will define the future, especially the Bitcoin one. Strong words from a major tech entrepreneur. Now look, Jack has been very pro-Bitcoin for a long time. Jack's Cash App is a place where a lot of people are buying and selling and getting exposure to Bitcoin. So he's got a Bitcoin business. Obviously, he's a bit biased in favor of Bitcoin like so many of us, but it's really cool to see someone in such a high position like Jack talking so favorably about Bitcoin and the potential for cryptocurrencies, particularly Bitcoin, to have a big impact in the continent of Africa. Now, Africa is a big place, but I want to look at this really great article here from the guys over at Cointelegraph, breaking down some of the opportunities and challenges for cryptocurrency adoption in Africa. So, you have to understand about Africa is that it's a huge place, right? We're talking more than 1 billion people, 50 plus countries, loads of different languages, loads of different fiat currencies, so many different things happening across this huge and diverse continent. So you can't really just make grand sweeping statements, Africa this or Africa that. We've got lots of different countries we're talking about when we talk about what's happening on the continent. But some interesting statistics for you, though, from some particular countries around Africa. So is crypto popular in Africa? Well, yes, it is. 10.7% of South Africans have cryptocurrency. Now, look, obviously, you have to look into the polls and think, well, who they ask, all this fun kind of stuff. But that is an amazing statistic. 10.7% of South Africans possess cryptocurrency. That is huge. Nigeria, 7.8%. Ghana, 7.3%. Massive adoption in terms of percentage of the population that actually owns cryptocurrency. Those countries also tend to usually top the list in the most Google searches for Bitcoin. So obviously it is popular in some countries in Africa. Now, why is cryptocurrency so popular in Africa anyway? Well, looking across all the different markets, we have cross-border payments, which stands as a very powerful thing. You know, even though you've got all these countries which are neighbors, the interconnections between the banks and the cross-border payment solutions is not always there. So Bitcoin makes that really easy. You can get around capital controls in your country, for example. I think Nigeria's got some pretty tight capital controls as an example. And of course, within Africa, some of the countries have total basket case currencies, like Zimbabwe. Obviously, the Zimbabwean currency is famously screwed up. It had the $100 trillion note. So that gives you an idea about inflation in Zimbabwe, which is a very famous story, but they've relaunched a new fiat currency and they've already seen 380% inflation and capital controls on the Zimbabwean dollar just this year. So most people can only get about $20 a week out of the bank at the moment, which is mind-bogglingly small amount of money. The South African rand's been taking some big hits this year, so people who are buying and holding Bitcoin can see some real value in that, even versus their own fiat currencies, which are the units of account in their country, but which are performing worse, much worse than a lot of cryptocurrencies. Also, there's a massive opportunity for a lot of African economies to simply do that leapfrog effect over top of a lot of the banking infrastructure that we currently see. So in sub-Saharan Africa, we're only talking about sub-Saharan Africa in these statistics, but 2 in 3 adults in sub-Saharan Africa do not have access to a bank account. Now, sub-Saharan Africa is a huge region. Obviously, that situation is going to be very different if we compare Zambia to South Africa, for example. But overall, that's a shocking statistic. And if we can get smartphones into the hands of a lot of these people, Well, now they can have financial services decentralized without needing to trust a bank or their own local junky fiat currencies. People can have that financial power from their smartphones. You can get some pretty cheap smartphones these days, so people can download a Bitcoin wallet. They can download an Ethereum wallet. They can be getting stable coins. They can be earning interest on those stable coins on decentralized platforms. They can be making loans to themselves using their crypto collateral and all these different kind of things. When we start to look at some of the wider use cases that we see is currently forming up for decentralized finance with things like insurance, well, then it starts to get very, very interesting very quickly. There is a massive opportunity with all these countries and 1 billion plus people for Bitcoin to come in and disrupt in a big way. And another thing to mention about Africa is that there's quite a few countries in Africa that have actually banned cryptocurrencies. We have Morocco, Algeria, Libya, Zambia, and Namibia. They have all come down very hard on cryptocurrency. Obviously, you can't actually stop Bitcoin. Bitcoin, if you have an internet connection, you can access it. What they're really stopping here is the rise of exchanges in those countries, the ability of people to easily onboard and offboard with local fiat. But they can't stop peer-to-peer payments. They can't stop people actually sending and receiving Bitcoin. They can only make it more difficult for people to get it. It's unfortunate to see some of these countries being so woefully behind the times. But look, when you see the moves of some of the big countries that have also come down on it, Saudi Arabia's come down really hard on Bitcoin. China's come down hard on Bitcoin. So it's not super surprising, but thankfully there are some real beacons of cryptocurrency adoption on the continent, places like South Africa, places like Nigeria, places like Ghana that are really getting into cryptocurrency and are making positive moves towards cryptocurrency adoption. Let's move on to Germany. This was a pretty big story that came out a few days ago. So German banks in 2020 will be allowed to sell and to custody cryptocurrencies. That's massive. Imagine being able to walk into your bank and say, I'd like to buy $1,000 worth of Bitcoin, please. And they say, yep, sure, no problem. Here you go. That is very, very interesting. Now, this is not just about being able to buy cryptocurrencies. Obviously, the custody is a very important part of this equation, and that's a part that I'm a lot less comfortable with. Being able to buy Bitcoin from your bank, that's a pretty cool service. Allows people to have that guaranteed access to be able to buy Bitcoin at their local bank without having to worry about their card provider shutting them down and all the BS we've seen going on with banks, preventing people from easily getting their hands on cryptocurrencies. Now, the custody thing, we've seen a lot of custody services coming up from some of the biggest names in crypto. Coinbase has custody, Gemini has custody, Ledger has custody, and on and on and on. When we start talking about letting your banks hold your cryptocurrency, I'm a lot less excited about that. And look, I can admit that as an intermediary step for a lot of people, this is a potentially very important part of the overall infrastructure of what is being built out for crypto. If you can verify on-chain that yes, you own the cryptocurrency that the bank says you own, that they're not selling Bitcoin to 10 different people and saying that everybody has Bitcoin and doing all the crazy BS that banks usually do, then that might be okay. But we have to keep it real. For the average Joe, they want to go in, they want to feel safe, that their crypto's safe, and the bank says, yeah, you can buy it here, and then we'll keep it safe for you, just like we keep your fiat safe and all that. I see it as a necessary step to cryptocurrency adoption, but you need to hold your keys. The ability of holding your keys, the feeling of holding your keys and knowing that you've emancipated yourself from the banking matrix is a pretty cool feeling. But here we are. Germans are now going to be able to buy and hold cryptocurrencies using their bank. It is what it is. Part of the adoption curve, but also I hope that those people will buy Bitcoin, realize what Bitcoin is and ask to withdraw that Bitcoin to a wallet that they control and don't leave it sitting in their bank, although I imagine quite a few people will. Over in Russia, Russia reportedly considers a ban on using crypto as a means of payment. Russia, man, what are you doing? You're so on the fence about this stuff. Back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. We're going to ban it. We're not going to ban it. We have to really focus in on this is only as a means of payment. Russia is not talking about banning trading or banning ownership or banning mining. Simply that if you want to pay for something inside the Russian Federation, you still have to use rubles. Now, in terms of actual implementation of this, it's going to be pretty hard. I mean, yeah, if there's a restaurant or some kind of brick and mortar shop selling whatever, clothes, let's say, it's pretty easy to target them and to say, hey, I see you have a Bitcoin accepted here sign. You're going to have to take that down. You can't accept Bitcoin here. Is that actually going to happen? Is anyone really going to care? Time will tell if this actually does come through and move from just being a proposal to actually becoming a law. But they're not going to stop online payments. They're not going to stop peer-to-peer transactions. I mean, Russia's huge, obviously biggest country in the world, but also 150 million plus people in Russia. They're not going to keep tabs on all this kind of stuff going on. But at an official level, they want the ruble to remain king in Russia. So no real surprises there. And the final story for you for today, Ethereum's North Korean nightmare. Vitalik Buterin pledges help to free Virgil Griffith. So, this is a crazy story. That's Virgil, by the way, right here. Hey, Virgil. So, what Virgil did, Virgil decided that he was going to go to North Korea, to a North Korean cryptocurrency conference, and give a talk. But not just any talk, a talk on how the North Korean government can use cryptocurrency to evade U.S. sanctions. Virgil, what are you doing, man? For a smart guy, was kind of dumb, man. Kind of dumb. You know, it's, I don't agree with the sanctions regimes at all, but putting yourself out there on the line like that, going to North Korea and making yourself a target, kind of silly. But that's a different situation. It's interesting that they targeted someone for talking particularly to North Korea because North Korea does horrendous things. No one's going to sit here and defend the North Korean government. But if Virgil had gone to Beijing and did a talk for the Chinese government about how they could use blockchain to, I don't know, do all kinds of crazy stuff, nobody would probably have a problem with that, right? Or if we took it to Saudi Arabia or whatever it might be. I think it's a bit cherry picking here to target Virgil for this, but at the same time, Virgil, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? What are you doing? Anyway, he's facing up to 20 years in prison for doing this, which is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I hope that they just let him go, the slap on the wrist, and say, Virgil, don't be silly, man. What are you doing? But he does face the real potential to go to prison over giving a presentation to the North Korean government. Now, if he does go to prison for this, well, we already know that we live in a society where there's one rule for the rich ruling class, one law for the rich ruling class, and a separate law for everybody else. But just think about the BS the banks have got away with. In the last few years, all of the world's major banks have been complicit in helping to launder money for drug cartels, for sanctioned countries. They've literally done the money laundering for sanctioned countries. Nobody went to jail. He was just talking about, Virgil, he was just talking about publicly available information that you could find by doing a Google search. That's what he did in North Korea. North Korea could have just Googled that and would have saved Virgil a lot of trouble. But the banks have been caught literally laundering money for some of the worst governments in the world, for some of the worst organizations in the world, from actual terrorist groups to drug cartels and all the rest of it. No CEOs go to jail. Those guys get bonuses. Sometimes they have to resign and then they get their golden parachute. So sorry you broke the law and did horrible things. Here's $100 million. Go enjoy your yacht. But Virgil might go to jail. So I hope Virgil doesn't go to jail. It's kind of silly of him to go there and do this, but it's what he did. Hopefully he doesn't have to pay a harsh punishment for it. Anyway, guys, that is all from me for today. As always, I'm super keen to know what you have to say about any of these stories. Do you think that Virgil should go to jail for what he did? Do you think that German banks doing custody for cryptocurrencies is a good or a bad thing? Do you think that Africa may be the next big place for Bitcoin adoption? And are you a hodler of last resort? Let me know about down below in the comment section. As always, you guys are totally freaking awesome. Also, let me know what you think about the format. I decided to change it up a little bit today. Instead of me standing in front of the screen, I thought I'd sit down and go through some of the news stories with you guys more directly. So let me know what you think about that as well. And if you did enjoy the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. That would be supremely awesome. Subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. Long live the blockchain, and peace out till next time.